A big concern for a lot of us right now is the constant and never-ending power grabs from the government and also large corporations. Privacy is rapidly becoming a thing of the past, and there are things in motion right now that could even threaten our control over our own money. Central Bank Digital Currencies, also known as CBDCs, are a big part of this, and they're spreading. China has expanded their digital yuan program to 12 more banks. The Bank of Japan announced blockchain-based reserve experiments, and then the European Central Bank is lining up a pilot for 2027. So in this video, we're going to go over what's actually happening with all this, what's at risk, and also what normal folks like us can do to get ready for all of it. First, let's start with what a CBDC actually is. A central bank digital currency is digital money that comes directly from a central bank. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the People's Bank of China, all of those are central banks. Right now, when you have your money in your checking account, that money is a liability of your bank, not the Fed. So if your bank goes under, that's why the FDIC has to step in. A retail CBDC would be different. It would be a direct claim on the central bank itself, and you'd hold it in some kind of wallet, probably through an app that your bank or the government provides. A CBDC isn't the same thing as Bitcoin, what you have in PayPal, or even the money that's in your bank account today. It's a whole other animal entirely. And what has a lot of people concerned is that globally, 91% of central banks are exploring some form of CBDC. The Atlantic Council says that 137 countries representing 98% of global GDP are looking at this. So it isn't some fringe thing. It's most of the main governments in the world. But it is important to note, though, that exploring something and launching it aren't the same thing. The Federal Reserve has claimed that they have made no decision to pursue a CBDC, and that they wouldn't do it without Congress passing a law first. But just to play the devil's advocate a little bit, we've all seen the links that our politicians will go to if they don't have the votes to get something that they really, really want. They are a shady lot after all. Then across the pond, the Bank of England is still in the design phase, and the European Central Bank is targeting a potential first issuance in 2029 if their legislation passes next year. The one that's actually running right now is China's digital yuan, which they just expanded in April. So when it comes to at least the next few years, we're probably not going to have like a digital dollar forced down our throats just yet. Instead, the near-term issue is the bigger trend behind it. Every year, the use of cash continues to drop, and more of our bills, benefits, payroll, and grocery purchases run through just a handful of giant payment processors. Also, our digital identity is getting tied even tighter to how we buy stuff. The Bank for International Settlements calls this the shift to always-on payment rails. And here in the U.S., we've got FedNow and the RTP network doing 24/7 instant account-to-account transfers. And while none of that is a CBDC, it is a big chunk of the infrastructure that one would use if it ever got launched. But if one was launched, it would have huge impacts not only in the world of finance, but on things that we use every day and rely on. First off, there's physical cash. As payment systems get more digital, fewer local businesses keep a lot of cash on hand, and even fewer of them are set up to deal with cash particularly well. Governments still recommend keeping extra cash in your emergency kit because during power outages, things like ATMs and card readers aren't going to work. That advice, it's been there for years, but it matters even more now because the more digital that everything gets, the worse things are going to be when systems do poop the bed. Then after that, a CBDC could also potentially affect your grocery budget. Things like instant payment systems are reshaping how merchants get paid, how fees are structured, and how credit flows. And when payment fees shift, any increases usually end up being put on the consumer. So as all this continues to progress, we could see even more volatility in the cost of everyday items. Next, there's banking access, and this one is already happening. More and more banks are doing things like consolidating, closing branches, and pushing everything into apps. As money gets more digital, the risk of account freezes, holds during fraud reviews, and identity-based access failures go up. And while a lot of issues are going to be caused by just normal system failures, consolidation does also increase the risk of abuse, either from bad actors or from the gatekeepers who control access. Then there's privacy, and this is one of the biggest concerns, especially for preppers, since digital money creates a trail of everything that you buy. Over in Europe, both the European Central Bank and the Bank of England have both claimed that their CBDC designs wouldn't let the government see what you spend your money on, but Just think about your current debit card. Your bank already knows where you shop, what you buy, and when. Now imagine if that data gets linked to your digital ID. Whether or not the government can see it, a whole lot of companies can. Yay, targeted advertising. But also, going back to the government side of things, we all know that history is full of examples of the government saying one thing and then doing the total and complete opposite. Like when income taxes first came about here in the US, only like the wealthiest 0.5% of the population were supposed to be affected, and that isn't how things turned out, obviously. But one thing that's even scarier than zero privacy is the potential for programmable money, which is money that has restrictions built into it. Those can include restrictions on particular items, expiration dates on the money to encourage economic activity, or restrictions on where it can be used. CBDCs can also be combined with social credit scores, which could allow the government to restrict your access to funds or prohibit you from buying certain things if they deem your behavior unacceptable. This has actually kind of already been implemented in China, where millions of people have been blocked from buying plane or high-speed rail tickets. Now, both the ECB and the Bank of England have claimed that their retail CBDC proposals would not be programmable. They said that it would be prohibited by law and also technically impossible in the way that it's all designed. But the reason that they had to state all that is because the capability does exist, and unfortunately, once the infrastructure for something exists, somebody down the road who didn't make those promises can change the rules. So that's a huge thing to keep an eye on. Then another thing that CBDCs can affect is your emergency fund. In a world where your checking account might have a fraud hold placed on it because of some stupid AI flag transaction, or like your wallet app is down for a couple hours, having an emergency fund that you can actually touch becomes way more valuable than it used to be. After that, this could also affect your digital identity. The European Union is rolling out digital identity wallets for all member states by the end of this year. The Bank of England's lab is already testing something they call verifiable credentials for payments, and whether or not a CBDC ever launches here in the United States, it's possible that what's happening over there could change the way that you prove who you are to buy stuff online. And if your digital identity gets compromised, then that's not just a cybersecurity problem anymore. It could affect your ability to buy things that you need daily, like gas and groceries. But, I mean, it's okay though, because data breaches never happen anywhere, right? Then another thing that'll become a bigger issue after a CBDC is implemented is payment system outages. And while we do have to occasionally deal with those now, there would be much bigger margin for error. An example of that would be what happened back in 2022, where Dcash, which is the digital currency of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, went down because of an expired certificate. It wasn't a hack or a cyber attack, it was just an expired certificate, and the system was offline for a couple of months. And if that can happen on a relatively small scale, then it can also happen on a bigger one too. But even though a lot of this seems outside of our control, there are things that we can do about it. The things that protect you from CBDC related issues a lot of the times are the same things that protect you from financial problems after a hurricane, cyber attack on your bank, or just getting fired. The first phase should be pretty easy for most folks, and all it involves is just going to your bank and pulling out $20 in small bills, like maybe 2 5s and 10 1s. Stick them in an envelope and then put the envelope somewhere in your house that you're not going to be tempted to go and raid it for lunch one day when you just don't feel like cooking. While there are legitimate concerns that CBDCs will speed up the transition to a cashless society, we're not quite there yet. Even China still has physical currency, so for now, having even just a small amount of cash in your home or survival kit, it's still a pretty good idea. While most big box stores and chains will probably be shut down, smaller mom and pop stores that are owner operated may stay open at least for a little while. And if you have more funds that you can put towards this, then yeah, obviously go ahead and do it. Build up your reserves to like $100 in small bills over the next few paychecks. Then after that, phase 2 is meant to give you more redundancy. And for that, the first thing that you want to do is open a second account at a different institution. And the main purpose of this is to make sure that you still have access to at least some funds if your main bank has an outage, if there's a fraud hold, or just some other issue. Like I use a second bank for my business. That way, as few people as possible have information about my primary bank account that I use to pay for the really important stuff, like the house. After that, increase your cash reserve up to $500 if possible. Like earlier, keep it in small bills. Then, number three, sit down and write out a paper list of all of your account info. Things like the name of your banks, customer service numbers, account numbers, and then any login recovery information that you have. Stick all that mess in a waterproof bag and put it somewhere safe, like a gun safe. Then for phase three, this is where we start getting into long-term planning and safety nets. First, do whatever you can to harden your digital identity. You can do that by using things like multi-factor authentication on important accounts. You can also use phishing-resistant multi-factor authentications, which can either be a physical security key like a YubiKey or pass keys on your phone. And YubiKeys, they're around $50. Second, keep building your emergency fund. 3 months worth of expenses is a common goal, but a good rule of thumb is to start out with just like $1,000 and then work your way up from there as you can. Third, stay diversified. Don't route everything through a single app or a single bank, because if Apple Pay or your main bank goes down, you want to have backup ways to pay for things like groceries, gas, and medicine. Fourth, pay attention to the safeguards that your country is debating. When a CBDC or a digital money law comes up for a vote, ask questions like, will cash still exist? Will offline payments work? Is programmable money prohibited? Is there due process before accounts get frozen? And is my spending data kept private from the government by law? Then after that, there's phase four, which is ways to operate outside of a digital financial system. And I think of this as having two main parts: individual self-sustainability and off-the-books trade. So individual self-sustainability is something that all of us preppers are already doing. We would just need to do it to a greater extent. The same food stockpile that would get us through a month-long blackout after a hurricane is the same food that would get us through a month-long breakdown of a CBDC system, or give us a head start if the powers that be decide that we shouldn't have access to our money because we're not good people. Then to take that individual self-sustainability further, that's where you have things like gardening, raising animals, and rainwater harvesting. Because if a situation lasts long enough, most people's stockpiles, they're going to struggle to keep up, and having the ability to reliably produce your own food and collect your own water allows you to survive outside of that system, at least to a certain extent. But the bottom line is that we as individuals can't do everything on our own. We're always going to run into some sort of limiting factor, whether it's time, resources, or just physical capabilities. And to deal with that, you have to figure out what you do better than other folks and learn to capitalize on it. Maybe you're an expert gardener, or you've been canning for like 30 years. Both of those are valuable skills. Then what you do for a living could be valuable outside of your day job. Folks like nurses, doctors, plumbers, carpenters, all of those are very high value skills that can be traded. And if you want to be able to trade skills later on, it's a good idea to go ahead and start like a side hustle or your own business now, because doing that will give you experience working with other people as the person who actually has what they need. And you can also start building your reputation in your local area as somebody who has skills in that particular area, so they'll already know to come to you. So at the end of the day, this is definitely something that we should all be concerned about. While most of us don't need to worry about it like affecting our bank accounts next week or anything like that, it would fundamentally change how we interact with money, so it's worth preparing for. Now, if you want to see 8 food items that could get more expensive or harder to find in the next couple of months, then click here. Or if you want to see what to do right after an EMP happens to give you and your loved ones the best chance of survival, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.